This is an open letter to my pink skin friends and friends and my, other complexion friends. Anyway, we have a saying in the shithole that I am from, that I came from. In that shithole, in their language, they have a saying. They say, "کافر همه را به کیش خود پندارد," which is basically means a non-believer. In this case, I guess they mean non-believer of God or holy or whatever the fuck they mean these days. But basically means a non-believer believes that everybody else is also a non-believer. A non-believer believes everybody is a non-believer. Because he doesn't believe, I guess in their case, God, he thinks everybody else doesn't believe in God either. So, Now this came to mind, has been coming to my mind many times recently, that with regards to China and my pink skin friends' perception of China, what it is and how harmful it can be, and oh, we gotta have our guards up, oh, we gotta do this and that and the other. And, defensive posture and offensive posture, and we gotta do this and we gotta do that, and it's all, a lot of hee-haw from the cowboys. We all hear. So here's the thing, my pink skin friends, for those of you who are not part of the yee-haws, I think you can at least see my point here. There is no reason to believe China is going to behave as the fucking Europeans have done for the past 500 years. Repeat after me. There is no reason to believe China, if they become, I guess, the world superpower, it doesn't mean that they will behave even in a similar fashion as the Europeans did when they had all the power during the past 500 years. You see, Europeans and people of European descent, my pink skin friends, you're a little too paranoid, and you really know your own history. Many of you do, some mostly don't, but those who do know the history of your own history, and therefore you think that anybody else more powerful than us will definitely do as we did. That can't be true, because we go back to the wiring. Our brains, different races, the brain is wired differently. That's why they like different musics, that's why they like different fashion, that's why they like doing different things in their free time. People, based on their races, are more or less, based on their race, are wired differently. Just wired. It's just the vibration is different. Now there are, varieties within races. There are varieties within races, a little louder, a little quieter, but still they're wired very much the same. People of the same race. There is a saying, old saying, everybody believes it, that, they say this race, they're hot-blooded, and that race, they're cold-blooded, and this race is hyperactive, and that race is contemplative. It's just there. It's what it is. It's not racism, it's just recognizing that different races are wired differently. First, they're wired differently, that's, genetics, and then they're brought up differently, and that's the environmental input. So therefore, there is no reason to believe one race will behave exactly the same way as another race did when they were in that position. So thinking that if, you see, look at just one example, gunpowder. Chinese had come up, built, made gunpowder, but they didn't call it gunpowder. Their mind is not wired that way. So I believe they used it all the time they had it. They used it as a fireworks, as a form of amusement. I'm sure they had their own wars and the blah blah blah, but trying to use everything they can as a weapon. What kind of weapon I can make with this that I have, with this new thing? That's purely an European idea. It's like all the advancement in, between pink skin societies, 90% of the advancement is first in the military. Sort of like everybody is paranoid, so as much money as we can, we have to put in the military. And then, there are some uses come out of whatever military thinks of as a form of killing other human beings. Then if things, technology and science comes out of that, and they find some civilian use for it. But first and foremost, all the innovation is done for the military in the Western Hemisphere, in pink skin colonies of the world, in Europe and the European colonies. It's all about, all the innovation, all the technology, all the science comes out of the military, because all the investment is made in the military. Mr. John Stewart, when you say, oh, why don't we have an audit? Because you're putting everything in the military. That's the paranoia is at work for everybody to see on this planet. But the idea is, do you believe the Chinese have the same paranoia, wire-wise in their brain, as the way their brain is wired? Or, as the way their culture has brought them up? No, not at all. How many Chinese do you know who flies off the bat, who flies off the chair into a rage? How many Chinese have you ever witnessed to fly off in a rage, over some matter? It's the idea of being hot-blooded and cold-blooded. So, no. You haven't seen any. I haven't seen any. It's not a stereotypical. Stereotype is correct, folks. Just stop being so better than thou situation. No, stereotypical things are real. That's a real thing. That's the wiring of the brain. Now there are varieties, as I said, high and low. You have some varieties within a group, within a race, a little louder, a little more quieter, but the wiring more or less is the same. Fuck. So why is it that you think if the Chinese become more powerful than us, or rather as powerful as us, they will go on an adventure of colonialism and they will come and occupy me? There are these, representatives and senators in the House and the Senate, and they have come up with this bill, and that the Chinese cannot buy a land, and these other races, this, and that cannot buy our lands. Why? That's the paranoia at work. That's the idea that if we give them a chance to fuck us, they will fuck us. No, folks, that's not the case. The Chinese, about it, if you read some fucking history, folks, you will know that about 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years before you, my European pink-skinned friends, decided to start colonizing the fucking planet and slitting the throats of anybody who, wanted to stay on their land. Before this show that you put on for the past 500 years, the show of colonialism by mainly British, Spanish, French, before this show of force, about 1,000 years ago, before you start doing this, the Chinese had built, it's in the history, they have built ships 10 times the size of your biggest ships, and they had navigated their way to Africa and Middle East and Australia and all of those islands, but they never went in as, give me your land or I will slit your throat. They did their thing for a couple of hundred years, I believe. They went around and met all these different races. From Africa, they took some giraffe and hippos to China for their emperor to see, and they did some, and most of the time they brought people shit. It's in the history that most of the time they were bringing people shit instead of taking. The giraffe and the hippo was a symbolic gift, but they were mostly going around gifting the rest of the planet with great things that they had built as Chinese. That's their culture. That's their wiring. That's their wiring. That's not the European wiring. And I understand. We all understand. Your wiring is different. Your wiring is get off the land or I will slit your throat. Red skin, black skin, yellow skin, brown skin. Right now in Israel, the European pink skins have gone there and they're telling the brown skin locals that you don't exist. Either get off the land or I will slit your throat. Or nowadays they blow up their homes. Right now in Israel, they keep blowing up the natives' homes to push them back off the land. This is an European perspective in life. Mine or no one's. Mine or I turn it into a fucking wasteland. Right now it's happening in Ukraine. The Russians, one set of pink skin against the Europeans and North American, another set of pink skin, and you're basically saying the land in Ukraine is all mine or I turn it into a fucking wasteland. Both sides' perspective is just that. Mine or I turn it into a wasteland. Well, Russia may have a little more points on their side because it's right on their border. They being paranoid, being European, should I say pink skin, and paranoid, they feel that Ukraine being a NATO base is too much on their border because it also occupies some of the Black Sea. That's that. Simple. They're all paranoid. Both sides are paranoid to the point that mine or I will burn it down. What the fuck? So you think the Chinese think the same. Their wiring is the same. And if they, attain some kind of power, they will, rule us. No. If they will come and buy our farmland and they will rule us, just like we did to the Indians, just like the British sent 100 million British killed 100 million Indians through a constructed famine, a preventable famine. The British were managing India because apparently they thought Indians, can't manage themselves. So the British, rolled their sleeves up and helped to manage India, and therefore in the middle, Indian lives didn't matter so much. So they, there was a preventable famine that they didn't prevent. They took the food for their own troops and let 100 million Indians go to die of famine. This is you. This is European wiring. Very cold and selfish and paranoid. Very paranoid. I might get, myself may get shot for this, but hey, it was a good life. But the point is this, you're paranoid and you think the Chinese will do to us the same as, we did to them, to the rest of the fucking planet. No, no. Here's the thing, believe me, each one of these other races, the browns and the blacks and the Chinese and the yellows and the browns and the black and the red, each one of them at one point had a chance of keep expanding and expanding and expanding, but they didn't, expanding at the expense of other races. The Chinese, where they were at the time that they were, with the ships that they were building, I'm sure the kind of, armory that they had, they could have taken over all of Africa 1,000 years ago, but they didn't. It's not wired that way. It's not wired as an European. Just like when they had gunpowder, they used it for amusement purposes, not for killing each other. Gunpowder had to reach Europe for the European brain to go to work and say, how can I use this to kill my brother? That's what they're doing in Ukraine. That's the paranoid mindset for you. Folks, I think with the experience that I've had with the Chinese, a few that I've known, and with in a wise way that they're running their country, they're putting, intellectuals in charge with a lot of brain power, instead of George W. Bush, or George W. Bush-like characters in charge. George in charge. Fuck. So they have shown more responsibility in choosing their leaders than, most of these fucking, in France. Mr. Sarkozy right now is under house arrest because it doesn't look good for them to send their fucking ex-president to jail, because Mr. Sarkozy accepted a $2 million, $5 million cash gift from Gaddafi. And once he got into office, the first thing he did was he agreed with the British and Uncle Sam's managers to go and bomb Libya and kill Gaddafi, the same guy who helped his campaign. He made sure he's the first guy he kills. This guy, not for killing Gaddafi. Gaddafi was was a group endeavor. But for the bribe that he accepted, for that he's been given 2 years of, house arrest instead of jail. This is what democracy brings you. A bunch of charlatan salesmen who, read scripts well. And, the only redeeming quality of Trump was that he went off script. He showed a little behind the curtain. He showed some of a little that what's behind the curtain. And we saw a little more through Epstein drama. A little more behind the curtains. And recently, you see the bribes that, have been paid to Supreme Court's members. Not bribes, I'm sorry, gifts. So, God forbid, gifts. Alleged gifts, I'm sorry, alleged gifts. So the point is this: your leaders turn out to be very, very, your democratically chosen leaders become very teased with wealth, because they don't make much as civil servants, as representative, comparative to Jeff Bezos. They don't make much comparative to, the very rich people that they have to represent or they're representing. They don't make very much. So the very rich throw them a bone here and there. as a gift here and a gift there and a gift the other to the executive, judiciary, legislature, as a gift, as a thank you, as a, good man, or whatever. In the shithole that I came from, it's called pulchai, which means tea money. You give him a little money, pay the civil servant a little money on the side, under the table, so he can have some tea after work. Has started 50,000 years ago. It's not a new thing. It's just that democracy and capitalism makes the democratic system very money-oriented, wealth-oriented, whatever you want to call it. When the top layer, when the leaders are not intellectuals and are not set above everyone, including the rich, then if it's not like that, this is how China is. The intellectuals are the rulers, and the rulers rule the rich and the poor. So sometimes they, have to squeeze the rich so the poor wouldn't die by the street. And that's what intellectuals do. They find the best way to deal with the situations. But, the best way to deal with not having health care or affordable medicine in Uncle Sam's manager's mind for the past 50 years has been, no, our friends are the rich, the poor can die because our friends are the rich. So we allow the rich to raise their prices as much as they want, not provide health care to the sick and the poor. That's okay, because they're our friends. The poor can go die. So this is how, democratic system has created this situation that the rich rule the ruling class in a democracy like situation in Western Hemisphere, in pink skins areas of the world. The rich are ruling the ruling class, and the ruling class are ruling the poor. So in this situation, the rich always win. It's sort of like a feudal system. The richest man in the village is also the leader of the village. That's how it used to be in the feudal time. The richest, the wealthiest, the man with the biggest land in the village was also the chief of the village. We're back there. Either the person who wants to become the leader of the tribe has to be personally very rich, like that oil tycoon who ran his own campaign, independent campaign, has to be privately very rich, or have to have very rich friends and donors. Sorry, not friends, donors. So, and you're thinking that this system that you have come up with is better than the Chinese system. No, I don't think so. It's just evidence is right there. The Chinese have, once they got on their feet, because the Europeans had, kept them off their feet for a long time. They call it 100-year humiliation. But as soon as they got on their feet, there have been, there have been some mistakes, but they have been putting one foot ahead of the other and catching up with everybody else and getting ahead. So this mentality that 1,000 years ago had a chance of colonizing the rest of the world but didn't, this mentality doesn't tell me they're going to be ruling planet Earth if they get the chance, the same way European pinkskins did. Which means, slaughtering anybody in order to obtain their land. As in Australia, as in New Zealand, as in Canada, as in North America, as in South America, as in Africa. They did their best, but there were too many Africans, they couldn't get rid of all of them. They got rid of all of the Redskins, more or less. Africans were too many. They couldn't eliminate all of them. East Asia, Asia, West Asia, just recently Iraq and Afghanistan, a colonial war based on very flimsy reasoning, evidence, reasoning. Beside the fact that we are righteous, Christianity is the right religion, and democracy is the right government, and capitalism is the right economy. Therefore, we are righteous. Therefore, we have to go, try to, stick it up their ass. I'm sorry, but I don't believe the Chinese are going to. I don't believe anybody should worry about the Chinese or the Indians or the Russians. Well, the Russians maybe. Russians are of European blood, but the mindset of the Chinese is very different. Mindset of Indians is very different. If they become powerful, they don't do. Their history shows that they don't behave the same way as Europeans have done. And by the way, this is exactly the same reason. For the same reason, my European pink-skinned friends, you guys are worried about aliens, because you have this alien race from another planet, with, I'm sure, with a very much different wiring, and you're sure that they're bad, and they should be defended against. We should worry about them. You're sure they're bad because you're bad. Why are you sure? Do you know how their brain is wired? Do you know their culture? How's their upbringing? What is their system? How they think, how they perceive the world around them? You don't know any of that with regards to aliens, but anytime you see anything you don't recognize, you start shooting at it first. Shoot first, ask questions later. This is with regards to Native Americans as well as aliens. Shoot first. No, folks, I don't think you should worry about China. Chinese brain doesn't work the same way as yours does. All paranoia and all violence and all thinking about how I should defend myself. You want to kill me, come and kill me. I don't need to defend myself. Not everybody thinks like you, that I should survive at whatever the cost to everybody else. No, I don't need to survive at whatever the cost. This is paranoia speaking. The Chinese, their culture shows that they are not as paranoid as Europeans, as pink skins. The yellow skins, their history of the yellow skins doesn't show that they are as paranoid as the pink skins. The history of the black skins and the brown skins shows that they're not as paranoid as the pink skins. You know what paranoid people, unparanoid people do? Simple, another anecdote with regards to how can you tell people are paranoid, have this total disregard for other people, and those people who don't have total disregard for other people. When you go to London, not a single British cocksucker will ask you, what do you think of London? What do you think of us? They could care less what you think of them. You can call that self-assured, and somebody would call that arrogant. Huh? You have different. We can use different words to describe it. Some may look at the situation that, for example, in London, the Londoners don't give a fuck what you think of their city. One looks at that and says, these motherfuckers are arrogant. The other side may think that, oh, that's self-assuredness. Well, doesn't matter what you call it, but when you go to a Middle East, one of the first things they ask you is, what do you think of my city, and what do you think of us, my people? They want to know your perception of them. perception of them. Because they enjoy giving good perception to other people, showing well. Behind the scene, they're 90% is bullshit. They're not nice. They're assholes. That doesn't matter. That's beside the point. The point is they care what you think, as opposed to the British who don't care what you think as an outsider. This side, these people, the wiring is different. They care what you think as an outsider. Maybe they're just trying to check their shill. Maybe they're trying to just check the show that they're putting on, seeing if you're buying the show. But at least the show is good. You shouldn't be buying the show that they're putting on. But you understand that they're not arrogant. They do care what you see, what you perceive, even if it's a show. But the British don't, the French don't. The French are known for arrogance. Germans don't. Which one of these fucking European nations, and obviously their descendants in other colonies, they don't care what you think of them? Fuck you. Who are you? You don't like it, get out. Rings a bell? You don't like it, get out. That's arrogance. People, races, culture, races are wired differently, and culture is an addition to that. On top of the different wiring that different races have, they have different cultures based on those wirings. So you can never really know them unless you know their history. How many Americans know Chinese history? I don't know any Chinese history. A little, here and there, picked up. But how many do know Chinese history? You can only guess what is going to happen by looking what has happened. As simple as that. If you don't know their history, if you don't speak the language, okay, don't speak the language. Know their history, read about their history, see if they are the conquering kind. See if they resemble anything like the British, the fucking British. See if when you go to China, see if they care. See if they care what you think of them. That's very important. To be a bloodthirsty colonialist, the first thing you have to be is arrogant. Not to care what the locals think of you because you're righteous and you're going to slit their throat if they don't give up their land. For this, you gotta be British, arrogant, self-righteous. Middle Easterns are not arrogant and self-righteous. Most of them. Asians especially are not arrogant and self-righteous. That's why they don't explode in madness, because they're not arrogant and they're not self-righteous, so they feel they have to think over things, and being volatile and explosive means you haven't thought. You're very sure that you're right, therefore you explode. Therefore you become agitated and you suddenly fly off the handle, because that's part of arrogant personality. The Chinese are not that. The Chinese are anything but arrogant. Always willing to learn, always willing to teach. You look at the schools in UK and the way Uncle Sam's managers are running the show on this side of the Atlantic. You look at the school system and you see, nope, it's not helping. Apparently, it's not important. Maybe it has been important once upon a time, but it's no longer important. The more important thing is the paranoia. Spending money on the paranoia. That is guns, armament, nuclear weapons, submarines. I'm sorry. The problem is not China. The problem is, my pink skin friends, the problem is your paranoia. You're too worried. You yourself has been bad, if I may say so. Historically, you have been bad boys, conquering and taking over land and people and eliminating people. You've been bad, so you perceive others, i.e. China and India and Malaysia and Indonesia and the Middle Easterners, you perceive them to be bad as well. Yeah, and your school doesn't teach you history to know some Chinese history, to understand maybe they're wired differently than us. It's just they don't teach you, so unfortunately you don't know. But you can be assured that different races are wired differently. Just because you perceive a situation as threatening, others may not. Just because you value your life a lot, others are not so paranoid about their life and its value, so they don't mind, being less armed all the time. They say, okay, I'm alive as long as I'm alive, and if things happen that I drop dead, well, I drop dead. I'm not going to arm myself to the teeth to make sure I stay alive. No, not everybody's wired like that. Thank God not everybody's wired like that.